The podcast you're about to listen to may contain objectionable language, adult and/or immature content, mentions of Jesus Christ, and unironic readings of holy Christian scriptures. If any of this is likely to offend you in a manner that you find less than enjoyable, maybe don't listen.
Hi, I'm Pastor Bob Schaefer.
And I'm Pastor Eric Damon. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to CPTB, which doesn't stand for Caucasian Pterodactyls Taking the Bait.
I want to do a Caucasian pterodactyls one.
Where are you going to find pterodactyls?
The museum.
Okay.
And if you do it at night, I've seen the movies. They come alive.
I'm game for that. But for now, this is Comedians with Pastors Talking Bible, and it's just what it sounds like. Every other week, Pastor Eric and I invite two working comedians to spend an hour with us kicking around a passage from the Bible.
Is it just any old random passage from the Bible?
No, it is not. It is a passage for the upcoming Sunday from the Revised Common Lectionary. That means that churches around the world, including yours and mine, are going to be having this passage read to them on a Sunday morning. And so that's what we use.
So these are the readings that we preach every single Sunday in church, or at least a Sunday that it's assigned for, and we're inviting comedians to come on and talk to us about them. No offenses, and it is still at this point seeming like a good idea to do.
It's worked out all right so far, and we're going to find out if it keeps on. What's our track record so far? 15-0, right?
15-0.
15-0.
At least one of them was a loss. I don't know which one, but
no, we have been absolutely crushing it. And when it works, because it always does, we get a great lens on scriptures for preachers like you and me. We get a really interesting Bible study for anybody who happens to be listening, and we get some laughs for everybody, and we all need that. If it doesn't work out today, I am going to send the angry pterodactyls your GPS coordinates and let you do with them.
That one I'm actually afraid of. It was always just a threat to call the bishop before, but angry pterodactyls? That is, we might have to stop. All right. Our guest... Do good. I don't want to be attacked by angry pterodactyls. We have back with us again, this time, Abbey Hannis. You want to say hello?
Hello, hello.
Welcome back. And Liz Martin.
Hi, guys.
And how are both of you still doing? Since we record these both at the same day, we can shatter the illusion and say we finished the last one like 10 minutes ago. Are you guys still doing good?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good to be back.
Good to have you back here after the long hiatus.
We're in the time machine. It's fine.
Eric is still wearing the same underwear he was wearing last episode. So
That
gross.
is, yeah. We're getting close to nighttime. I have to change. But no, really good to have both of you here. Last time we got a little bit of background how both of you kind of got into comedy. We got a pre-pandemic. Now, were you like right prime pandemic starting?
I was post-pandemic. I started fall 2021, but it was like still pandemic.
That is yeah.
But it was like
in church leadership circles, there are folks that'll like get triggered by you saying that was out of the pandemic. You are very Southwestern
much,
PA.
Yeah.
It's over. Who cares?
No, because
We're all tired of it. We're done.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in the ER. It's done.
No, it was like that's like a year later.
Yeah.
More than.
And that's what I think it was. I think it was Liz and Rachel who were saying, because they tried to have theirs be a mixed mic when they started. Mm-hmm, and then during the pandemic, the only people who would actually come out were the comics.
Yeah.
Like all the musicians were like not doing that. But comics
First chance I had to be out of the house, I was like, oh, you're not keeping me here.
I want to say fall 2021 is when like mics started popping back up. I mean, I know that there were, probably underground ones or whatever, but I wasn't cool enough to get invited to those. So I think like probably when you started is when like things actually started happening like consistently again.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah,
I really don't know what was going on before that.
They tried like summer of 2020 for like 2 weeks to have people out, and then they were like, these comics can't handle this. They can't do this safely. Send them back home.
Mm-hmm.
That was the experience within churches. Was the every single time we thought we could start doing something again, another announcement would come out, and you'd go back into closing it down. And I think it was around the 2021 that the ministerium. So that's where you get a bunch of different churches of different denominations in an area that work together, and that's called a ministerium. Mm-hmm. And we got back together to say we're going to start doing things again, and we went back in to shut down like the very next week. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the end of really doing anything. As we're just now, or is your ministerium functioning in a real way now? Have you gotten back, or?
Yeah, so we've got kind of with the local Bible study with the Lutheran pastors, we're still mostly on Zoom, but that is, I think, at least in part because our schedules are erratic, and we have never been real great about being disciplined about everybody being there every time. And so there were times when we were meeting in person that would just be really frustrating that like one person would show up. And at least this way, when that happens, we're only on Zoom and nobody has lost the time that it takes to drive. And so we've kind of found that like that works well for us. My church council is just in recent months trying to get back into meeting in person, but they also, some of them commute, and we've kind of found that Zoom works pretty well in some ways for that. So yeah, it's like things have changed where even when it might be good for us to be back in person, we're still using Zoom because it's just really convenient.
I've gained a hatred of Zoom. I was such a supporter of it when it was all we could do, and once there was another option, it was like, it's just pulling teeth to sit next to your screen.
I will never ever again want to do comedy on a Zoom call.
Did you do Zoom comedy?
I did. Well, I
watched some Zoom comedy.
So
I never did. It looks painful.
However bad you think it is worse. Because you fully are it would be me sitting in my room. I lived with two other comics at the time, and literally you would hear any of us at like a given time doing one of these stupid Zoom mics. So it's like us half-heartedly saying jokes that we like kind of wrote, and then zero response because you either have headphones in or everybody's silent, and you're like, it is. You feel like you're bombing no matter how good you could possibly do. And that is soul crushing on a different
most
level.
Most folks have their mic muted. I mean, I watched some, it's two people, Maria Bamford, I watched some on Zoom, and then Deanne Smith still does a Deanne Smith and Acquaintances thing every now and then. And I mean, there's times that I was like dying, but I know my mic's muted. Like they have no idea that they're hitting a joke that is hilarious. They're just saying a joke to the TV, and that's just got to be awful. I mean, even watching it, I felt bad for the people that I was watching.
I think I only did like 3 of them, and then I was like, this is not worth it. Like, even though I can't, like, I'm not doing any stand-up right now, I don't think this is helping me at all either.
It's funny, the things that worked and the things that didn't work. One of the things that during the pandemic we were surprised that worked well was doing virtual music. I'm the sort of geek who likes putting together stuff like that, and our choir was willing to indulge my geekiness on that. But we actually found that you can do a handbell choir. If you've ever heard bell choirs, mostly at your church, but there are some community ones too. We started getting the 4 ringers that we had to do virtual bell choirs, and we discovered that we could do stuff that required more ringers than we actually physically had because they could do multiple parts. And so music that we had in the cupboard that they had long since despaired of any hope that they would ever get to play that music again, we were getting to roll that out. And before it was done, even after we were back in person, some of our ringers still were recording pieces where they played all 12 or 13 parts just by themselves. And I mean, that's the kind of dumb thing that if you were to say what will work and what won't work, bell choir is probably not in the top 1,000 things that you think is going to work in a distant thing. And it actually was something that we kind of said, we should do this even when we don't have to, because it's kind of a neat thing.
That's
Bob is being really humble and saying that it just magically worked. The amount of hours that have to go in for somebody to take all of those recorded bells from amateurs, so they don't have a click track. They have to be slowed down and sped up, and to make
they
it
did have a
actually
click
work.
track because I made the click track.
Oh, but did they know how to play to a click track? So yeah, no, that is. It would not have worked in my congregation.
So I'm going to say, too, that my one of my ringers really went above and beyond, and her video's on our church YouTube channel if you want to go look for it, that as she was doing only her bell choir, she created personas for each of her different little Brady Bunch windows, and she made notes in her music when they were going to look at each other. So she consulted with me where they would be on screen, and one of them's a little bit flighty and doesn't have much to do, so she kind of gets distracted, and the others kind of tend to shoot her nasty stares at different points, and she scripted the whole thing out. And it's the sort of thing that it's subtle enough that you might not even notice it if you're not paying attention, because it just looks natural like that. But every single thing that she's doing there was planned and executed at a certain point. And I think that is just about the coolest thing that happened all pandemic.
That is awesome.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Well, Bob, since we are going to get into talking scripture
Are
at
we?
some point in time, even though we've had both of you on before, it is still worthwhile to let anyone listening know how we as pastors in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America view the Holy Scriptures.
We like them.
Good. That was it. We're big fans. I think that was the entire summation of my ordination vows was, do you like them? I said, yep. Bishop said, good job.
And here we are. If you need a little bit more about that, we are members of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, Pastor Eric and I, and so we treat the Bible as the inspired Word of God. It is God's message to us, but it's not Jesus. We worship Jesus and not the Bible. The Bible is full of great stories and poetry and speculative theology and all kinds of stuff that are not necessarily factual, historical, but they contain truth. And that's what we try to do, is we try to look for the truth in the Scripture, and particularly as it relates to Jesus and us.
But neither of our guests necessarily hold to those convictions about Scripture. Although I don't think you're leaning on it's the inerrant, literal Word of God side of not holding to that. But it's still, since we don't, I pick the guests who come on because they're people I enjoy seeing around Pittsburgh doing comedy.
Well, we like seeing you too, Eric.
Good.
No, for real. Really good at doing comedy. This guy over here.
Well, thank you.
Back in the early episodes, you said it was because you liked their wiener jokes. Is that still the major criterion?
I can't say the same thing. I can't say the same thing every time, but they both have prime quality wiener jokes as well.
What can we say?
No, jack of all trades over here.
But it's still, and we talked about it some in the last episode, but it's still worthwhile to get sort of your backgrounds with spirituality and to understand why you may have a certain take on something that comes from scriptures. And Abbey, you talked about your history in the large non-denom kind of mega church area, and a workhorse that if you have younger siblings that want to work that hard for the church, Grace and Emmanuel in Ford City and Manorville could use someone that works that way. But what I really want you said it was really fun until it wasn't. Mm-hmm. What happened? What makes it? Why wasn't it anymore?
I feel like it got to a point where after so many years of being there, like doing something great, putting something great together and being like, ta-da, ta-da. And then just like no one's there to be like, yay, good job, you did it, thank you. Here's your cookie, here's your gold star. You know, like I felt like I was doing so like one thing I always like to come back to was door hanger day. We had a day where it would be one leader would fill their car full of like preteen, teen kids and set us loose in a neighborhood where we would run around and put door hangers for our kids' camps and teen camps on doors. And we would do that like for a whole day in the middle of the summer because it was like summer camps. And then at the end we would like get Ritas. And like that was like a big thing we did. And it would always, it's like literally like child labor, but we would get Ritas at the end, so it would be all right. And like
Ritas is
that's what I'm saying.
High
for a lot.
compensation.
No,
So I had this moment where it's like margaritas. You got margaritas after that?
water ice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Got it.
So right after college, a friend from high school, I was in Colorado for college. I moved back to Pittsburgh, and a friend who had stayed in Pittsburgh had bought a Rita's restaurant. The way all of my just decrepit friends described that was he started a lemonade stand. And so I was like, so what's he up to? He started a lemonade stand. And you're like, that's a way to look at buying into a franchise restaurant. But so it was the kind of the lack of thanks? Is that?
Yeah, I also just really like there existed in the youth group like a small queer community because like it's the suburbs of Philadelphia, it's the 2010s, like some of these kids are a little queer, and so we would have like I knew of others, but nobody was outspoken about it. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm going to talk about this. And I'm a big proponent of smoking weed. Like my family knows, like I do it medicinally at this point. And I just couldn't like expose those truths of myself in the church. And then I left for college and I was like, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. That's it. And like, they didn't reciprocate that. And I was like, what about everything I've done for you guys? What about like everything we had? It felt like a breakup. But it's just like sometimes my mom will drag me there on the holidays, but like
she still attends there?
Sometimes she attends a couple of different non-denominational churches. I think once I left for college, like once I was like leaving the church, she was getting really big in the church with her like, Bible studies and that type of stuff. She's like doing that now.
Mm-hmm. And just because you brought up the smoking weed, how did that church feel about drinking alcohol?
It wasn't really talked about. I mean, I think the adults did it.
So it wasn't
sure.
like adults were not supposed to drink.
Yeah, no.
I can understand a tradition that has it's not our tradition. Martin Luther famously loved his beer. But there are traditions that getting drunk, period, is a no-no for. Yeah. And I can understand that tradition being like marijuana is off limits and verbatim, but verbatim, that's the wrong word.
Verboten?
That's the correct word. But verbatim is they are off limits verbatim. I said they're off limits, I mean they're off. But I get that there's generational differences in thoughts on it, but I don't see why as a policy matter marijuana is completely off limits if we're letting people go out and have a drink of whiskey.
Yeah. It was definitely a weird thing, but yeah, I just kind of live how I do now, and I enjoy that more than trying to hide it from people who I cared about.
And that's kind of why I asked was there fond memories looking back, because
sure.
It's sometimes if you're that deeply invested and then kind of cast out, it can really be a hurtful memory to look back on.
Yeah, for sure.
But you still remember having some good times there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, good times, bad times, crazy times. Yeah.
There was that one hanger that was really, really cool looking that kind of felt good to put on the doorknobs.
That blows my mind. Could you imagine trying to get people in the church to let you take their kids out to the neighborhood to just set them loose hanging door?
The permission slip is so intimidating to think about.
I don't think we had a permission slip. I think my mom just dropped me off at the church and said, I'll pick you up in a couple hours.
Oh, my. Just coordinating to get them all to show up at confirmation class at the same time is like 3 group texts and an email. And
yeah, no, I don't know. The way like the youth group kids would just like do any and everything for this church. Like we all just like it was not or it was like in a way like organized religion can be like culty sometimes. Like it was a little bit of that. Like we were like I was like dedicated to this congregation.
Yeah. No, and I said last episode that there's that even when we're trying not to be culty, when you've got an institution to keep the wheels under, it is so tempting as the leader to just take all the work you can get.
Yeah.
And that's when you're really trying not to be that way.
Yeah. But
if you're not being intentional about trying not to be that way, you can very quickly slide into you have to give all of this to the institution or else.
Yeah. Especially like from other public school, high school kids looking at me going and doing this, like, during all of my free time was like they're like, yeah, that's weird to the average high schooler at that time.
Nice. Yeah, you were. What is it? Of the world and in the world, not of. I get what's the phrase, Bob? The of the world, and not in it, or in it?
In the world, but not of the world.
I get my ins and ofs flipped backwards on that one. I know what it means, but that's what you were. You were. You were in the public school, but not of the public school.
Yeah, I was. I don't know how I did what I did in high school, because after these 2 podcasts, I'm now tired. But because that wasn't church wasn't my only extracurricular. You know, like I was the high school mascot. I was the senior class president. I was on the homecoming court. I did
a
everything.
Busy little girl.
Yeah.
I think she also just told us how exhausting we are.
That's
in the nicest
It was very polite.
I just can't do as much as I used to. I just get tired.
I'm glad that we are less exhausting than high school, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hated high school. I was one of those. I hated high school. I also got bullied.
Yeah.
Bullying builds character.
It makes you funny.
Yeah. And so now you bring up extracurricular activities. In the off time between the 2 episodes, you were talking about a cheerleading accident that I want to have a question about, but since nobody listening heard what this accident was, if you could give us kind of a little bit of what happened.
Yeah. It is funny because I would say I was a Christian growing up, but my real religion was probably competitive cheerleading. Like that's what my life was dedicated to, if we're being honest. I never cheered for like a school or anything. If you've ever seen like if you happen to turn on ESPN and there's like a competition, like that's what I did. It was like the tumbling and the stunting and all that good stuff. I did that for 13 years of my life. That was honestly how I would get out of going to church on Sundays, because I would have practice from like 12 to 9 or whatever, and I'd be like,
This sounds more familiar to my leading of a church experience, is the parents of the kids going, they have X, Y, or Z activity. We'd love to be there.
Oh, yeah. Or I was getting taken to church, and then I was changed in the car to go practice for 9 hours or whatever. But, I was in the gym probably like 20 to 30 hours a week. I worked there. I was on a world champion qualifying team by the time I was like 14 or 15. Doing a routine I'd done a million times before. threw a girl in the air. I went to go catch her. Whole solar shoot in my temple. Fell backwards and landed on my neck. So kind of that double hit. I went from being an honors AP student to not being able to read the cover of a Dr. Seuss book in about 24 hours.
Which is a traumatic shift.
I would say pretty traumatic, yeah.
And that's the question I wanted to get at is when people encounter something that has a cause for grief or loss in life, that usually impacts our spirituality or faith in some way. And I'm wondering if that played out in how you viewed God in general.
I definitely think it did. So that had happened in that would have been early 2015. I graduated high school in 2016, and my parents split about a year and a half after that.
That's a lot right on top of
Yeah. My parents' divorce was not amicable by any stretch of the imagination. And being of the product of teen parents, they both kind of reverted to being 17-year-olds once they split, because that's the last time they were alone. And that was a big reason that I had really gotten involved in the youth group in college. It's why I was doing Bible studies. I had tried to join another church congregation. I was desperately looking for something to
something stable.
So I was looking for anything that didn't seem like it was going to kill me. I think at that point I had lived out of my car once because I got kicked out of my house, or a lot of various things had happened. And we also had some family friends who were very, very devoted Christians, the church family, trademark, 5 kids all look the same, all perfect athletes and students, and everything's perfect, and they all go to church and love it. And, when it kind of became clear that my life was not fitting whatever mold of the Ring by Spring kind of crew, and, that whole vibe of Christianity in your early 20s, I ended up just kind of pulling back from Christianity kind of altogether, because I so deeply did search for something. And it was I'm not going to literally interpret the Bible. I think I encountered too many people that maybe just weren't Christians for the right reasons all at once. And, the injury led me to try to seek out more religion, and it ended up just being I don't think whatever, this is not the time for this. Maybe this isn't for me right now. Maybe I just haven't found the right group of people, or whatever it might have been. But I honestly ended up finding comedy, and I was there's the community I was looking for, and there's the being passionate about something, and not saying that I replaced God with comedy or anything, but just kind of how the timing worked out. I was I tried so hard to be a devout Christian, and it just didn't work for me. And then found comedy shortly after that, I guess.
And I think that's when large events like that happen, it shifts. Sometimes people dive in more. Sometimes people immediately back off.
Hey, it's like I said the last episode. I'm the ultimate person to convince here. I believe in a higher power, and I've seen a lot of miracles happen. And I truly have seen things work out in ways that should never work out. I think even the brain injury was happened for a reason. I used to have a stick up my ass and no personality. Like, I'm way more fun now. Thank God.
I'm glad you got the stick out.
Oh, I know, man. I tell her all the time, I'm like, you would have hated me if we met like pre-brain injury. You would have found me insufferable. But you don't believe that. But I do.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just because, like, I was kind of the same way. Like, I would always, like, before I became who I was, like, I was, like, when I was, like, younger, high school, like, I was very adamantly against, like, drinking, smoking, cursing. Like, I was just trying to be a good church girl. That's all I could give.
Well, I was going to make a segue, but I am looking at the length of our gospel reading, Bob. And how about we just dive right in to reading it?
Straight in. We're looking at the Gospel of Mark chapter 5 this week. It's for the 6th Sunday after Pentecost, Sunday, June 30th. Here's the Gospel. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came and, when he saw him, fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So he went with him. And a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had. And she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his cloak. For she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then he put them all outside, and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha, cum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know about this, and told them to give her something to eat.
So we've got two stories really in this reading, which I honestly don't understand why the lectionary committee puts them together in one story. Because that's what the pericopes are, what they're called, the little readings that we're assigned to read in church on Sunday. And usually they pick it so that it's one condensed little reading. And this one's very much two to me. And so I'm going to ask, does one of them jump out at either of you, or do you see a connection between the two?
I mean, both women or like girls healed by Jesus. That's I think a basic connection that can be made. But like,
I feel just never even made the connection that they're both women. The 12-year-old girl and the woman grabbing the cloak are both women in this. And
There's a lot of stuff here.
I've got to go home and mull over that now. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's something about like, cause like it's like a story, you know. So maybe something about like, cause like women are seen to be like more delicate, and like when they fall ill, it's like, oh, this like poor thing. So I feel like there's more like emotion to the fact, like, because if it was like I don't know, to the societal standards of like gender, I feel like it's just like sweeter that Jesus is like healing these women than if it was like an old man, you know. I don't know. That's like my thought to it.
I mean, undoubtedly, the first story is a story of crossing those barriers and boundaries set. I mean, a woman was not allowed to run forward and touch the cloak of a man in Jesus' position, even though he's far from, a high, lofty, powerful position. He's a well-known rabbi at this point in time, and for her to have run up and touched him was breaking all kinds of societal taboos. So I don't have do you have because I'm mulling over trying to make the connection with the little girl after it being a little girl and not the man's son. And I mean, maybe something in the case of a little girl would not have been valued as much.
So it's worth paying attention to these two things that are thrown together. Last week we had parables, and the word in Greek paraboles is literally something that's thrown together. You're taking two things and you're throwing them together. It's the peanut butter and the chocolate in the Reese's commercial, and you get something that has the meaning. And this is, on Mark's part, kind of a narrative parable where he's taking a story that he starts, and then he interrupts the story with something that seems to be kind of related, but not necessarily clear how it's related, and then he comes back to the main story. I mean, you actually see a lot of this in like sitcoms with the A plot and the B plot, right? But so we should, and I do have some ideas that from study that I've done what might be the connections, but I don't want to drop those just quite right off the bat. I'm still curious, knowing that this is something that's kind of an intentional technique on Mark's part. What do you think the ties are between the A plot and the B plot here that make it into a good episode?
The thing that stood out to me about both of the stories was the fact that like neither one was announced at all. Like, did Jesus ask, like, oh, like, who touched my cloak or whatever? Yeah, but it wasn't, like, it wasn't made a spectacle of. And then with the little girl, he was like, don't tell anybody, just give her something to eat, and we'll all be good. Like, I don't know. I guess that was the thing that stood out to me the most, was that, like, neither one was supposed to be brought up, and they're both like secret in different ways almost. It's like this lady did something she wasn't necessarily supposed to do, but Jesus doesn't care. He's happy that she gets better. And, in the second story, it's like, oh, I'm sure I could get a lot of praise for raising a little girl from the dead, but we're not going to do that, So I think
and they laugh at Jesus in that story, and like not in the good way either.
And it's a phrase that's used in study of Bible is the messianic secret. That's the keeping it a secret that Jesus is the Messiah. And in the Gospel of Mark, really the only people until you're looking at like resurrection approaching the cross time who know that Jesus is sent from God are the demons. That's every time he approaches a demon, they know exactly who he is. Every time he does something like this, we have to keep it a secret from the people. And there's a lot of study into wondering why that would be. Since it jumped out at you that he's keeping it, what reason do you think Jesus would keep it a secret as he runs around performing miracles and teaching?
I don't know why my instinct is to say that, like, Jesus doesn't want to be giving out miracles to people who don't deserve them. But then none of us deserve them, right?
That was going to be my quick
but that's
comeback.
The other thing, is none of us deserve them.
As an ELCA pastor, I'm kind of mandated to point
Yeah.
out that we're all undeserving.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
What do you think, Abby? Why is Jesus being secretive?
I don't know. I keep coming back to the demons because they always. It's just always something that's intrigued me so much, like why these creatures exist, just to like wreak havoc to these people trying their best. So I don't know, because like that's like a good reason to keep a thing a secret if you're like scared of demons. But I don't know, because like I kind of separate from it, but I feel like relates to this is like a little story time I have. People always bring up demons with it too. Is I went on a church trip. We went to Ocean City, Maryland, and we went in the ocean. And guess what we were doing? Baptizing people.
I thought you were going to hang some door hangers.
No.
Both equally important to the church cause, depending on who you ask.
For real. But we were baptizing people, and I baptized my friend in the ocean of Ocean City, Maryland. And when it was like a strong rip current, but we were only up to like our knees maybe. Okay. But I like dipped her down, and as I lifted her back up, like my energy to push her up brought me down, and the waves like knocked me at my ankles. And I fell and I hit my head underwater, and my body's like first reaction when I hit my head was just to go, I legally drowned. They had to like drag me out of the water and like put me on the four-wheeler and take me to the ambulance in the hospital. And I had to like get this thing to get me to cough it all up because I like legally drowned. And anytime I talk about it, I'm like, silly, crazy story, right? And people are like, the demons were trying to get you. The devil, he tried to drown you because you were baptizing people. I'm like, no, we were dumb because we were doing it in the ocean. Like, I don't know. It's something I always... But, like, even back then, like, it was never a big thing because, like, as soon as I was done, I literally wet bathing suit, gown on top, I'm going to the worship session. Like, they were like, you should go back to the hotel and sleep. And I was like, why would I do that? You know?
I'm A-okay.
All right. Baptismal Riptide is now in my top 10 unexpected terrors.
That's like a great band name. Like a good Christian rock group. I feel like you guys should save that.
So let me toss out a few of the connections that people smarter than I am have seen. So these are not like things that are original insights on my part, but so you already noticed that it's two women, a young woman, but at 12 years old, she is at the age that she'd probably be recognized as a woman at this point. You've got... And that 12 is important, right? That she is, it turns out at the end of the story, the girl is 12 years old. And the woman who touches Jesus' cloak has been suffering for 12 years. Now, I mean, that could be just a nice round biblical number. But I think there's also some significance that this one woman's suffering has been taking place for the entire lifetime of the girl whose lifetime is now ended. Those aren't coincidental. So there are these similarities. There's also, though, this contrast that Jairus is apparently a man of some social position. You know, he's identified by his role first. You know, so that's like Pastor Bob and Pastor Eric. You know, he's ruler of the synagogue, Jairus. And the girl has a room of her own. I mean, Jesus goes and he tends to her in a private room. So, you know, this is a family with some position and status and wealth. Meanwhile, the woman who comes up to Jesus, she's like the opposite of that. She is destitute because of her illness, which is an unfortunate echo here in our current reality. How many people are destitute because of their illness for 12 years? Setting that aside, but she also is an outcast because of her illness. I think I had read that the word for people with vaginal bleeding like she has, that they were called oozers. I mean, there's a Hebrew word that is literally an oozer, somebody who has an emission, and she was ritually unclean.
That's entirely too much onomatopoeia for me. That is, we need to use a different word. Well, describing what is that?
And so she had the same experience that women had every month of being ritually unclean for a period. This was her life for 12 years. So aside from the pain, aside from the medical suffering, there was also that she is on the fringes of society, and because of the ruling, if she touched somebody, they became unclean for a period. So she's like, actually, by going into a crowd, if they knew who she was and what was wrong with her, their accidental contact with them would make them unclean. She's like taking a tremendous risk. And by touching Jesus, she is at risk of making him unclean. The interesting thing is that instead of transferring her uncleanness to Jesus, I mean, maybe she does that too, he transfers his power and cleanness to her. The other little connection to make there is notice that it's two daughters, but the little girl is described as the daughter of Jairus, and Jesus looks at this woman and he calls her daughter. So those are some of the connections there, the compare and contrast.
Maybe it's just because I'm a nerd and I did the homework before I got here. But maybe this is just me trying to like interpret it and not read it literally. But when he tells the one, like the first lady, he's like, your faith has made you well, go in peace, you'll be healed of your disease. He doesn't say that like, oh, I'm going to just like, you'll be fine. And I'm just going to reverse everything that happened. He says you are like, your faith has made you well. It didn't say it didn't take away whatever's wrong with you, but it gave you, but you're healed. And I don't know. I thought that was an interesting way to put it.
Yeah. And
that's a common chaplaincy hospice type question is what does it mean to be made well? When a large part of your job consists of preaching the good news to people who are not going to have their disease go away, what does it mean to be made well?
And it's worth noticing that, and you should have noticed this in the Greek, the word.
Yeah, man, you missed your Greek translation.
I'm taking Swedish right now. I'm sorry. I'll get on the Greek lessons.
All the Swedish I know is hurdy.
You're pretty good.
Thank you. So the Greek word here is bold. The Greek word here is sozein, which is the word for saved. And so depending on the translation, some will say your faith has saved you. Some will say your faith has made you well. And that word actually, the normal usage of it was like to be saved from some sort of calamity, like an illness or a catastrophe. And it kind of got expanded into the sort of religious sense that we have. But literally her faith here is the thing that saves her, that makes her well, that saves her, sets her free from her illness, but also from the social isolation and all of the things that had been oppressing her for these 12 years. So, yes, how dare you not notice that? Did you not read the same sozein that I read?
And I think it's worth discussing the fact that the first woman breaks the rules. She does it completely the way you're not supposed to do. And that's not a problem with Jesus. And I think that has value to look at, because in our culture today, we definitely have a culture of there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, which, I mean, that exists in most cultures. But if you did something that we would see as a with good intentions, if you did it the wrong way, we get really down on people for.
Jairus kind of does things the right way. You know, he comes up and seeks Jesus in sort of a socially responsible, respectable way, and he asks him with great deference, and even his people come to him and say, "Look, she's dead. Don't bother the guy anymore." You know, so you've got one person who does things the right way, and then you've got one who just breaks all the rules because what else is she going to do?
I like that, because if it was just breaking the rules, it becomes the rules are stupid, and that kind of flies into the let's put down everybody who does it the old way. But both of them work.
At the end, you have two women who are healed.
Yeah, I like that. On podcast, silent nodding works so well.
It's verbal nodding. That's what this is. Yeah.
Yeah. Bad habit to do nonverbal communication. Just talking with my hands and nodding or shaking my head.
And that works really well
on podcasts. Yeah, exactly.
That is.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out if, like, did Jesus want us to break the rules or not break the rules? Because clearly it seems like both work out for her.
Well, that's what I like about it, because it's not a comment on whether or not we should follow the rules, and it's a comment that Jesus wants to heal. And that's a very different comment than if you only got one or the other.
Are you aware that you are so much more positive than any Catholic priest I've ever met in my life?
To be honest, part of the motivation to doing this podcast is not to have it be that Bob or I are a different strand of church than people have heard. It's to put out there that we're actually, both of us, pretty darn mainstream for a lot of Christianity. That's kind of why we're there. It's folks who have had poor interactions with the church. Seemed like you heard Abbey, one of the other Abbeys of the Pittsburgh comedy scene, had said, like, "Well, if you were my pastor," and it's like there's a million pastors like me out there. It's not an odd thing. But I get that that's not everyone. Not everyone has interacted with the church that really just wants to say the good news.
It is still nice to hear. We like that.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. My ego is totally
awesome,
fed.
Honestly, like.
But I do. Once my ego says yummy, 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 then I'm mandated as part of my vocation to remind you that you can go to a lot of other pastors that'll actually give you the good news of Jesus Christ.
You and Ellen just changing my mind out here.
Yeah. And Ellen's a good one to have. I think she gets credit for being a little better than some others. I'm just a ragamuffin, but Ellen's good.
You're a pretty cool ragamuffin, though, so it does work out.
See how I fished for that?
Yeah,
I got exactly what I cast out for.
I think
just reeling it in.
Put it on a T-shirt and own it.
But I think that's just saying that this is about Jesus wanting to heal however it comes about them is as solid a takeaway to end as we normally do. Since last time you pitched your Mr. Smalls show, what date is the Mr. Smalls show? Because I don't know if it's before or after we put this episode out.
June 29th.
June 29th.
It's a Saturday.
That will be, so we'll have this out before that happens. So remind them again about the End of Pride extravaganza. Spectacular. Not extravaganza.
No, it's a spectacular.
It is you are wrapping up the whole of Pride.
Yeah, no, End of Pride Spectacular. It's a drag musical, so it's like I dropped a ring, ignore that. It's a play, but instead of like musical numbers, they're drag numbers. And it's going to be awesome. It's at Mr. Smalls Theater in Millvale or Pittsburgh, PA. And it's going to be a hoot. Yeah, I'm director, and it's my first time being like not an assistant director, so I'm super excited about that. It's going to be awesome.
Sounds awesome. Everybody, if you're listening, make sure you go check that out. And Liz, where can they find you again?
I am Lizzie_Martin on all the things. I know I have a couple shows coming up in June and July, but I'll be honest, I don't know those dates right now. So just follow me and it'll be on there.
And they'll find out when they can find you in person.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for having us on, guys. This was super fun.
Thanks for being on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And thank you to everybody who is still out there listening to us. If you are offended in any way, we're sorry.
Again, if you stuck around this long, it is totally your fault. We are not sorry.
Well, as long as you're here, why not do us a favor? Be sure you subscribe to CPTB wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with all kinds of people, friends, family, pastors.
Create malware algorithms that download our episodes at inhuman speeds.
Excellent. And we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Until then, may the Holy Spirit do her thing in your life.